like the pine trees lining the winding road. I got a name, I got a name.
Hi, this is Ben Hart. I'm going to talk to you today about how to be a great writer. And really, it's not as difficult as you might think. Now, most people dread writing because they make it so much more difficult than it needs to be. I make my living as a writer. I've made millions of dollars over the years writing. I'm an advertising copywriter. I write advertisements for my clients. That's how I make a living. I've also written 7 books. And I've written speeches for some of America's most famous political figures, including Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, presidential candidate and Congressman Jack Kemp, Governor Pete DuPont, many U.S. senators and congressmen, in addition to some of America's top corporate executives. I no longer write speeches. I prefer writing advertisements. There's less writing and more money in writing advertisements. I love advertising because I'm very interested in human psychology. To write a good advertisement, you need to know something about psychology. You need to know the psychological triggers that cause people to act. That is, to cause people to want to buy what you are selling. The point is, if you know how to write well, you will never starve. You will always be able to find a job. The reality is, very few people can write well. Even most teachers really don't know how to write. So if you can write well, you really will set yourself apart from the crowd. If you can write, you become an immediate superstar in school, in college, and later in your career. Because I make my living as a writer, I never need to go to an office. I never need to fight rush hour traffic. I have not been to a real office since about 1990. My office is usually my sofa at home, or it can be a beach, or a ski lodge, or anywhere in the world that I want to be. All I need is a laptop computer and an internet connection, and I'm able to make as much money as I need by writing. That's the life of a writer. So my advice to you is to learn how to write well, even if you don't want to actually make a living as a writer. You need to know how to write if you want to write a good cover letter to send with your resume in order to land the job that you are looking for, or to write a compelling essay for your college application. You need to know how to write well in order to write a good memo or a good business plan. Throughout your life, you'll be judged by how well you write. I'm told by college admissions officials that the essay for many colleges is the most important element of your college application. More important even than your 4-year GPA. More important even than your ACT and SAT scores. Yes, those are important also, but the reason your essay for your college application is so important, and the reason college admissions departments weight your essay so heavily, is that it's your essay that tells the college admissions committee who you are, including what motivates you, what kind of a person you are. Your essay on your college application is where you have a chance to show what's unique about you, and why adding you to the college campus will help improve life for others on the campus. There's tremendous power in writing if you write well. For example, you can use your writing to spread your ideas, to persuade others that your ideas and your way of looking at the world is the correct way. Think of America's Declaration of Independence. That document, and the words in that document, literally created the United States of America by inspiring others across the 13 colonies to fight a 7-year war for independence against the British Empire, which was the largest empire in the history of the world. The British Empire at that point was the world's superpower. The words in that document, in America's Declaration of Independence, continue to inspire Americans today. We celebrate that document and what it accomplished every year on July 4th, America's birthday. That's what the written word can accomplish. If you can write, you have the capacity to reach millions of people, even tens of millions of people, with your ideas. On the other hand, if you can't write, you really can't accomplish much in this world. If you can't write, you have no capacity to persuade others to do what you want them to do, whether it is admit you to the college of your choice, hire you for the job that you want, agree with your ideas and thoughts, or even join your movement. The ability to write equals power and influence. Those who know how to write automatically have power and influence. Those who don't know how to write don't have power and influence. The ability to write is really the ability to persuade. Some use their ability to write not so much to persuade, but to entertain. You really won't be able to entertain anyone if you can't write. You need to be able to write if you want to write screenplays for movies or TV shows, or to write jokes for comedians. You really need to be able to write if you want to communicate. I asked a well-known Hollywood movie producer why so few movies are made every year. And when you think about it, only a few new movies come out every week at the movie theater. And they keep showing the same movies over and over again on TV, on HBO, and on Showtime. There are just not that many movies made every year. I asked this Hollywood movie producer if the reason that there are so few movies is because movies are so expensive to make. And he answered that money is really not the problem. The problem, he said, is a shortage of good screenplays. The problem is a shortage of good writing and of good stories. The money is there, he said, but the writing is not. That's what this Hollywood movie producer told me. That's what I mean when I say, if you know how to write well, you will never starve. You will always have a job. And very likely, you'll become quite wealthy. And if you can both write well and tell a good story, the sky is the limit for you. So now the question is, what's the best way to learn how to write well? Well, let me give you a few rules that have served me very well. Rule number 1, write every day. I recommend you keep a journal and write at least 500 words a day. Write about what happened to you that day, what you were thinking, what your goals are, what your concerns are. Just write. Write about whatever interests you. Write a lot. Write all the time. You can't get good at anything without practice, without constant practice. When you were a baby, you learned to walk by trying to walk and by practicing walking. And over time, after much practice and trial and error, walking became instinctive for you. You don't even have to think anymore when you walk. Walking has become instinctive for you, natural. Well, you learn writing the same way. You learn to write by writing a lot, by writing every day. Rule number 2, be yourself when you write. That is, write as you actually think and speak. Many people have trouble writing because they worry that they're not going to sound intelligent or intellectual enough, so they try to sound super intelligent and intellectual. And they end up writing convoluted sentences that are difficult to follow, or they write in a very flowery prose. Don't do any of that. Just write in your own voice. Write how you actually speak and think. Write in a casual, conversational style. This will make your writing so much easier for people to read and understand. If you write in a casual, conversational style, your writing will be so much more interesting. 2 writers who had a big impact on my writing were Ernest Hemingway and J.D. Salinger. I wanted to learn how to write like them. I love J.D. Salinger's little book titled Catcher in the Rye. You can read that book in a few hours. I found that book fascinating because it was stream of consciousness writing. I got the sense that Salinger just wrote this book exactly as he was thinking it. There was no planning involved. He just spewed the words onto the page. He just wrote exactly what he was thinking at that moment. And I think that's a great way for you to write when you are writing your journal. When you get used to writing that way, you will never have writer's block. You just write what you were thinking at that moment. So read Catcher in the Rye again with that thought in mind. I'm also a huge admirer of Ernest Hemingway. He's probably my favorite writer. I love Hemingway's short declarative sentences. No fluff. No complex sentence structures. Some say the greatest short story ever written was Hemingway's A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. Now that story is only 1.5 pages long. You can read the story probably in 5 minutes. And that's it. A Clean, Well-Lighted Place, considered the greatest short story ever written. There are no wasted words in that story. Every word counts. Every word matters. And the sentences are so short and simple. A 10-year-old could follow that story and understand it. If you want to learn how to write well, read Hemingway's A Clean, Well-Lighted Place over and over again. And try to write like that. But the key is, be yourself when you write. You can't write like Hemingway or like J.D. Salinger because you're not them. You are you. But you can learn a lot by reading these writers. Then, write in your own voice. Rule number 3. Read this book at least once a year, every year for the rest of your life. This is the famous book on grammar and style by Strunk and White, called Elements of Style. In fact, you should read this little book through at least 3 times right now, then read it once a year. The book is very short, only about 120 pages. You can read it through in a couple of hours. If you learn the rules of grammar and style in this book, if you memorize them, you will have the tools of the writing trade. You really can't write if you don't know how to write a grammatical sentence. And if you read this book and you really internalize this book, practically memorize it, you'll know the rules of grammar and style that are essential to writing. You don't want to submit an essay with your college application that includes all kinds of grammatical errors and spelling mistakes. Same goes for your resume, a cover letter with your resume, or essay assignments that you turn in at school. You might have wonderful, brilliant things to say in your essays, but if your essays include all kinds of grammatical mistakes and spelling errors, you're not going to be taken seriously. Your readers will think that you're sloppy and that you're illiterate, that you're stupid. It would be like showing up for a job interview at a bank dressed in blue jeans and a t-shirt. You wouldn't be taken seriously. You would not get the job. Now, I personally do not follow all the rules of grammar all the time with my writing. I will sometimes use periods where commas should go. I'll sometimes start sentences with words like and which and that's. I sometimes split infinitives, and I end sentences sometimes with prepositions. I do this usually as a way to write in an easy, casual, conversational style. I try to write as people actually speak in everyday life. And I do this because of the kind of writing that I do primarily, speech writing and advertising copywriting. And I'd write this way if I were to write dialogue for a movie or jokes for a comedian. So there are many reasons to break the strict rules of grammar and style, but you still need to know the rules of grammar. When you break the rule, you need to break the rule for a reason, not because you didn't know the rule. And usually for your school and college essay assignments, you're going to want to follow the rules of grammar strictly. Your teacher or your college professor wants to see that you know the rules of grammar before you go off breaking the rules. The good news is, the rules of grammar are, for the most part, very logical. The purpose of grammar is to enable you to write and speak clearly. So read and even memorize this little book, Strunk and White's Elements of Style. So that's rule number 3. Rule number 4, join your school newspaper. This is probably the best way to learn how to write. Despite my 12 years in school, I really could not write at all until I made the decision to join the college newspaper at Dartmouth. My editor at the school newspaper was another student named Greg Fossetall. He would assign me articles to write and then edit them. I would then rewrite and correct my article in accordance with his edits. That's how I learned to write. What's great about writing for your school or college newspaper is that you are forced to write every day, or almost every day, or you can't publish the paper. Many great writers started out as newspaper reporters. Ernest Hemingway was a journalist, so was F. Scott Fitzgerald. These were 2 of America's best writers of the 20th century. F. Scott Fitzgerald was also an advertising copywriter. Like me, he worked for an ad agency. Unlike me, he hated writing ads, but he wrote ads as a way to supplement his income so he could write his novels and short stories. The point is, you learn to write by writing. You also need an editor to help you learn, which is why you really must join your school newspaper. So you will be forced to write every day. You really can't learn how to write by writing only when given an assignment by your teacher to write. That would be like expecting to learn to ski by only skiing when you take a lesson. You don't learn to ski that way. You learn to ski by skiing. The more you ski, the better you get. So keep a daily journal or diary and join the school newspaper. If there's no school newspaper for you to join, start one. Consider also starting a blog on a subject that interests you. There are more than a few bloggers out there who are getting very rich blogging. Wouldn't that be kind of neat? Making money by blogging. Plenty of people do. That's how you learn to write well, by writing every day. Write simple declarative sentences. The boy hit the ball. That's how Ernest Hemingway writes. Simple, clear, direct. And that's how you should write. If you do that, you will never starve. You will always be able to earn a living. Knowing how to write well is just about the most important skill that you can learn in life.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I got a name, I got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I got a name, I got